Hello, my friends. Unfortunately, today's news is very bad. Um, Late last night, the General Staff reported that the Ukrainian forces had left the village of Krynky. This raises two major questions. If they left, why did they stay there for almost a year? Secondly, if there was a plan to expand the bridgehead from advancing towards Crimea, then this plan has failed. Why was such a high price paid to hold this bridgehead? This remains a big question. However, it's reported that the Russians periodical attack Kozachi Lahiri. It seems that there are still Ukrainian forces unit there, but if the Ukrainian forces have withdrawn from Krynky, they likely won't hold out long here either. Additionally, there are reports of a large fire near Mala Kakhovka, with Ukrainian forces continuing to destroy the Russians and their bases. Now, it seems that if Ukrainian forces are retreating from the left bank, advancing towards Crimea in the near future is almost impossible. In the Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians are also trying to achieve success. They are assaulting Mala Tokmachka area and breaking through near Novoandriivka. They aim to encircle and reclaim all the territory that the Ukrainian forces liberated during their counteroffensive. They have already recaptured Robotina and continue their assault actions to achieve further objectives. In the Vuhledar direction, the General Staff officially announced late last night that the Ukrainian forces have retreated from the village of Urozhaine. We were aware of this yesterday and it was reflected on the maps. However, the situation is such that today the Ukrainian forces have to withdraw from the settlements they have held for a year. These villages were liberated with the help of Western weaponry. At that time, a major counteroffensive was planned with significant resources allocated, and General Zaluzhny developed plans for advancement. Unfortunately, a year later, the Russians are retaking these liberated villages, including Urozhaine, Staromayorsky, Robotyne, and Krynky. This indicates that the situation is grim and the front line is experiencing severe fighting. Despite the Ukrainian forces having to retreat from the liberated territory, they continue to strike deep into Russian lines. Yesterday, an attack was carried out in the Mariupol area, targeting an S-300 air defense system. According to intelligence reports, the radar station and the Russian launchers were hit. More detailed information on the consequences of the strike is being clarified. Clearly, the work continues. Okay, it's good. In the Kurakhve direction, the Russians continue to assault the northern part of Krasnohorivka. According to the Ukrainian forces, they may soon have to leave this settlement and retreat to more fortified positions, as the Russians are demolishing all Ukrainian fortifications with airstrikes and artillery. Consequently, holding the area for an extended period is becoming increasingly difficult. The situation remains challenging in Paraskoviivka and the village of Kostantinivka as well, where the Russians continue their assaults, but there have been no changes along the front line. In the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians launched strikes on Pokrovsk last night, resulting in 4 reported injuries. At the same time, offensive actions continue along the entire front line. The Russians are still attempting to advance toward the highway and Novohorodivka. However, even if they proceed at the current pace of a few kilometers per month, they might reach the highway and Novohorodivka by the end of the summer, but this is not certain. The Ukrainian forces are making every effort to stop the Russians and destroy as much their personnel and equipment as possible. The battle for every meter continues, making it difficult for the Russians to advance quickly. In the Toretsk direction, the situation is also very difficult. The Russians are trying to encircle Toretsk and they are making progress. Additionally, fighting continues in Pivnichne, Pivdenne and Zalizne, as well as street battles in New York. While there have been no new changes along the front line, the Russians are bombarding the entire area so heavily with cap bombs that sooner or later the Ukrainian forces will likely have to retreat from some positions. Russian aviation currently gives them a significant advantage. If the bombardments with cap bombs can be stopped, Russian advances would also come to a halt. Without destroying Ukrainian strong points, they will not be able to advance further. In the Chasiv Yar direction, the fight continues. The Russians have regrouped, brought in new reserves, and are conducting flank assaults. Reports from the Ukrainian forces indicate that the Russians are continuing to push forward. In the Syrsk direction, the activity remains high, with approximately 10 assaults conducted daily. The Russians are trying to fully capture Bilohorivka and are making breakthroughs near Verkhnyokamensky, Spirne and Rozdolivka. However, the Ukrainian forces managed to repel all attacks and the front line remains unchanged over the past day. In the Crimea direction, the Russians continue their attempts to break through near Nevsky and Tarny, but haven't achieved any success. Shelling continues in the area, and Ukrainian forces report conducting counterattacks in the forest near Crimea, though there are no changes along the front line as of now. In the Svatove direction, the Russians are attempting to break through near Stelmakhivka, but the Ukrainian forces are repelling all attacks. Further south, offensive actions towards Makivka and Rekivka have ceased, stabilizing the situation in this area for now. In the Kupiansk direction, battles are ongoing near Petropavlivka with no decrease in the number of shelling along the entire front line. However, there have been no significant changes, and near Pishane, Russian attacks have stopped, and they are gathering more reserves for a breakthrough towards the water barrier, which is still 9 kilometers away. In the Kharkiv direction, Russians continue their battles for the village of Hlyboke. They have been ordered to advance further, while the Ukrainian forces are conducting counterattacks, trying to push them out of the village. The fighting here is intense, with the Russians recording video appeals complaining they are being sent to slaughter. However, there are no changes in the Kremlin's plans and they continue to order advances. In Vovchansk, the situation remains unchanged. There is a massive amount of shelling and street battles in the city continue daily. Despite the high level of activity, there are no changes along the front line. Meanwhile, on Russian territory, they have decided to restrict access to 14 border settlements.
С 23 июля ограничиваем доступ в 14 населенных пунктов Белгородской области, где оперативная ситуация складывается крайне сложной.
In addition, the Ukrainian forces have once again conducted operations on Russian territory. Yesterday, there was a major fire near Rostov, resulting in power outages in Rostov, Taganrog, and Bataysk, and in Crimea. There was also a fire at the Krymsky training ground. Furthermore, rolling power outages have been announced in Crimea as well. Overall, the struggle continues. And that's all from me. So please, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.